I gotta stand up for the Kyiv Independent. Because I saw the Kyiv Independent just had, and I've been seeing people reacting to Kyiv Independent's reporting lately. And I want to make sure none of you guys in my chat are these schmucks. Because if you are, I gotta like take you out back, put you over my knee, like paddle you or something, like old style with a switch. Because I am very upset about this. The Kyiv Independent has been producing some very important reporting around the crossing into the Dnieper River. They have been doing important reporting when it comes to corruption in Ukraine, whether it has to be around the misalocation of funds by the military administration in the hospital area, undercutting the rebuilding process and the corruption there. But they have been doing really important reporting to hold the government to account. But because the reporting doesn't make the Ukrainian government look good, like for example, their big report calling out the Ukrainian government for not making large-scale trench defenses in the scale that the Russians did, like with the Surovikin line. People reacted to this like the Kyiv Independent had just become RT because they're criticizing the Ukrainian government, saying that you're breaking the unity of the country and all this stuff. And I'm looking at the accounts that are saying it, and they're all English speakers. And when I say English speakers, it's a nice way of saying none of them are Ukrainian. Like all the Ukrainians seem to keep appreciating the stories. All the Ukrainians I see are appreciating the reports on the corruption in the hostile area by the military administration. That type of reporting is important if they're going to hold the government officials to account, to make sure that the funds that are set aside for rebuilding aren't spent on some like on Ladas and gold watches and just like top-down corruption. Like that's important reporting. Whether or not it makes the Ukrainian government look good, who gives a fuck? At the end of the day, if it's not reported on, if there's not a spotlight on it, then the issue is not going to be addressed. And then while people are paying attention to Ukraine, while the aid money's flowing in, while they need to be taking advantage of this moment to capitalize on every penny, as we're seeing of the potentiality of aid drying up one day, that money should not be wasted, and that reporting is important. And those defenses, the things that we're saying about the defenses were right. They should have been building these large-scale defenses months ago. They should have been doing that. And it shouldn't have come down to the, what was it? It was the digital minister Fedorov pushing the defense minister to work with the state services to make the trenches. He shouldn't have been the person to initiate that. These are all legitimate questions to be asked by the Kyiv Independent. And it's local Ukrainian journalists doing these critiques, not because they want the Russians to win, but because they want to hold the government to account. Because if the Ukrainian public isn't vigilant, then the government will not hold the corruption to account. The government will go through a process of atrophy because the institutions are made up of people who need to be vigilant. If there's not a spotlight on the issue, if there's no attention on the issue, then you can't resolve it. If you don't know about the corruption in the military administration in Hostomel, then how are you going to address that corruption so you can get the rebuilding process underway as people in the area still don't have their homes rebuilt? When you go to Bucha, the area is significantly rebuilt. Hostomel, not so. Why? It's not magic, it's corruption. These are real issues that need to be addressed. And just saying, oh, it makes Ukraine look bad. I don't give a fuck if it makes Ukraine look bad. You can talk about it and how it can be addressed properly. And if you address it, then there's nobody that can make Ukraine look bad. Because you know what? If you don't address these issues and you just pretend they're not there and hope nobody notices them, eventually some Fox News reporter is going to find their way over to Ukraine, is going to find out about the hostile military administration, and they're going to be the ones to break the story. And instead of it being sympathetic Ukrainian reporters talking about the need for vigilance about corruption, it's going to be Fox News reporters talking about the need to cut off aid. Address it now before it becomes a bigger issue, and the way to address it now is to spotlight it, and that requires vigilance with good reporting, good on-the-ground reporting, which the Kyiv Independent provides. And the fact that they're getting spit on by a lot of their readership is honestly disgraceful, to the point where the Kyiv Independent had to publish a piece today. They had to publish a piece. I don't know if you guys saw this. They had to publish a piece like defending their need to like. Yeah, here it is. Why we don't avoid unpleasant stories about Ukraine. How sheltered do you have to be? How sheltered do you have to be? Like, do you think if there was some scandal on World War II about like corruption in the military, it'd be better to just have the scandal, go through the scandal, deal with the scandal, than just keep it covered up and not ever address the problem? Which, I mean, you can just say like, okay, well, don't make it public, but address it in private. The people who manage the problem are incentivized to keep it private because they benefit from it being private, so they don't have to deal with it. Like the hostile military administration, they don't want the story to explode, because if the story explodes, then Zelensky might do to them what Zelensky did, or other administrators might do to them what, like maybe Zaluzhny or someone, what Zelensky did to the head of the military recruitment heads in all the districts after they found out about the corruption and recruiting scandal, which is just fire them all. You need to know about the problem. God, I can't believe they had to write an editorial about why we write stories about Ukraine doing bad thing. Oh my God. Hello, guys. I don't know. Why did we have to write that story talking about that government minister who was using funds for cats with AIDS in Ukraine to snort lines of coke? Well, we just hate Ukraine. That's why. Come on, let's read the article. We've got some bad news. In fact, we've got plenty of bad news, as well as some good news, and handfuls of regular news. As with any media publication, we cover many topic and development. And you know what, before reading this, can I just show you the type of reaction the Kyiv Independent has been getting on Twitter lately? Yeah, here it is. Here's one of the examples. This is just one of them. There's a lot of them. As Ukraine wrestles with internal tensions, the threat of Western aid drying up, and the slow realization of summer counteroffensive being a strategic failure, questions are raised about Ukraine's preparation for a long defensive fight. Okay, and in this article, I've read this article. It's a really good article, by the way, where they interview a bunch of soldiers about, you know, the need to dig, the need for long defensive lines, how the government has waited too long to build long defensive lines like the Russians did with the Surovikin line, because there was like political fears about, the impression that could give about, to the communities near the front line, to the impression it could give about a short war, on the impression it could give to allies, like all sorts of things. It's a really good article. I hope you guys go read it. But a lot of the article's point was the government took too long to dig these trenches for a bunch of reasons that they could have believed was legitimate, but they should have started digging trenches long ago, right? That's the article, right? Read this. Used to think of you as a reliable source of information. This new clickbait misinformation stuff is not doing your company or Ukraine any good. Think on. What? What? What does that even mean? Let me read the article. We've got some bad news. In fact, we've got plenty of bad news, as well as good news, and a handful of regular news. As with any media publication, we cover many topics and developments, both upsetting and inspiring. But lately, we have seen a worrying trend that needs addressing. That is, people have been attacking journalists for negative stories about Ukraine and the war. More often than before, when we publish a story touching on something that can be seen as upsetting, we get pushback from those following what's happening in Ukraine, in the form of emails to journalists or comments on the website and social media. These upsetting stories include reports about the hardships on the front line, battlefield missions not going as planned, corruption allegations rocking the Ukrainian government, or political quarreling that seems inappropriate for the times of war. While such stories get a lot of appreciation from our readers seeking well-rounded reporting about Ukraine, that's us. They also provoke accusations of being too pessimistic, publishing harmful or demoralizing stories, helping Russian propaganda, or even infiltrated with Kremlin agents. Being infiltrated with Kremlin agents, my God. The words clickbait, and we just read that, and disinformation get thrown around. We want to take this opportunity to explain why we, a Ukrainian publication, choose to publish stories that can be seen as presenting Ukraine in a bad light. At the Kyiv Independent, our mission is to report on Ukraine. We aspire to be the place for those seeking to understand Ukraine and the developments here. As journalists, we keep the public informed and hold those in power to account. That includes Ukraine's leadership in times of war. We wouldn't be doing anyone any good if we ran the Kyiv Independent as a propaganda outlet or a feel-good publication filled solely with stories about Ukraine's successes, of which we cover a lot. Falling out of touch with reality is dangerous, especially in times of war. We saw how this disconnect with reality has been the reason behind some of the Russian failures. Thanks to their bad intelligence and corrupt leadership, they walked into Ukraine thinking they could take Kyiv in 3 days and be met with flowers. We can't afford to fall into the same trap of ignorance. Reading the stories of Ukrainians' incredible bravery and victories feel good, and so does writing them. But reality is bigger than just those stories. As with anywhere, our reality in Ukraine is a mix of inspiring and upsetting developments. The war makes everything more vivid. Corruption or political quarreling are more shocking than before because they're happening while Ukrainian defenders lose their lives to buy the country time. And we understand the people are shocked and hurt, and these things still happen. So are we. We would be doing a poor service to our readers, both inside and outside of Ukraine, if we filtered out the bad stories. In fact, we'd be actively causing harm if we were doing it. We have been getting comments complaining about things becoming more negative or editorial policy changing in the last few months. The truth is, the editorial policy hasn't changed. The events we report on have. We are careful and do everything we can to get our facts straight. We'd rather wait and run the story later, but get it right. There have been many stories that we hadn't published because we didn't have enough evidence to be absolutely sure that we have a solid story. Like everyone else, we have made mistakes. We make sure to fix it fast, run a correction, and talk it through in the newsroom to keep it from happening again. We understand that our readers find certain stories upsetting. It doesn't change that they are part of our objective reality, and the public deserves to know about them. The only facts we won't publish are the kind that can hurt troops on the battlefield, such as locations of specific units or details of planned operations. But we don't think that the war should be used as a pretext to put a blanket cover over issues like corruption or misconduct. We don't think that upsetting stories from the front line should be censored. The daily reality of the war is brutal, and it shouldn't be concealed for the sake of positivity alone. Soldiers defending Ukraine are people with feelings and fears. They are giving their lives, and the least we can do is listen to what they have to say, especially if doing so can prevent misconduct, whose cost is measured in human lives. Shedding light on it can make a case for action. Importantly, no matter how upset one is with any story, incendiary comments and personal attacks against journalists are irresponsible and can't be justified. We live and report in a country where journalists have been attacked and killed for their work. Last but not least, Ukraine is about freedom. This war is about staying free, not just from Russia, but from what it stands for, authoritarianism, oppression, and lawlessness. One can't win a war by adopting the enemy's values. Freedom of the press is the cornerstone of democracy and a healthy society. Suppressing unpleasant stories and calling for the journalists' silence isn't what Ukraine stands for. We are serving Ukraine, its futures, and our readers. In light of this, expect that the Kyiv Independent will continue to bring you the truth. At times, it will be unpleasant. This is a really, really good piece. This is a really, really good piece. I mean, a really, really good explainer. It's not really a piece. It's just kind of like a quick, like, hey, this is why being honest is important. But I do want to also say that I feel like for a lot of people, they're now seeing some of the aid dry up, and the possibility of new aid is still in question. And seeing the prospects of that aid was to dry up, and the results of the counteroffensive showing that the war is going to be here for a while, and seeing the negative consequences that come with that. And it's really hard for some people to wrap their heads around. It's really hard to accept, and I understand that. But don't shoot the messenger. Don't shoot the messenger telling you that this is going to be a long war. I mean, if there's going to be so much shooting, we need all the messengers we can get. People are saying a shooter in the Czech Republic is Ukrainian when he's a native. Yeah, I saw that too. People were saying, I don't know if you guys saw, we reported on it briefly a few days ago, but there was a big shooting in the Czech Republic. Real tragedy, like 13, 14, 15 people died. Largest shooting in the country's history. Super awful. Like within 24 hours, people were saying that the shooter was Ukrainian and he was a Ukrainian refugee and the Ukrainian this, Ukrainian that. And I mean, that was almost immediately, it was immediately disproven, but it's still being spread around. I'm still seeing people saying that we let the Ukrainians and then they kill us all, yada, yada, yada. I swear, man, look, 9 times out of 10, that shit originated with some internet research agency. That shit came out of some Kremlin cookhouse. It smells of it. That came out of some Kremlin cookhouse.